This meeting is to be webcast, and members are reminded to activate the microphone when they first start and switch them off when they're finished. And that obviously applies to other speakers. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or another use by such third parties. If you are seated in the lower public seating area, it is likely that the recorded cameras will capture your image, and this will result in the possibility that your image will become part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human and data protection rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should move to the upper public gallery. Okay. Introduce myself. My name's Steve Heather. I'm the chairman for tonight's Area Planning Subcommittee West. To my left is my Vice Chairman, Councillor Dave Dorrell, and to his left is Rebecca Perrin from Democratic Services. To my right is Jerry Godden, Planning Officer, and to the far right is the webcasting operator. Right, advice to public and speakers attending the Council Planning Subcommittees can be found on pages 5 to 8 of the agenda. I will remind you at this point that you have 3 minutes only to make your presentation. Thank you. Apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillor Bassett and lateness from Councillor Stocker and Councillor Kane, SK.
Thank you. Right. I've had a chance to read the minutes, and can I confirm them as an accurate record? Thank you. Declarations of interest. I should declare an interest non-pecuniary on application number 9 by virtue of being a member of the Lee Valley Regional Park Lee Valley Regional Park Authority. And Councillor Sartin.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, on item 9 again, as with your declaration, I'm also a member of the Lee Valley Regional Park Authority. I haven't taken any part in any discussions on this application at the authority, but also, and this is advice I received the last time an application came forward for this site, because I received, our property received one of the consultation letters. I have determined that my interest is non-pecuniary and that I will remain in the meeting for the consideration of the application and vote thereon. But I did take advice on this the last time the application came up.
Thank you. Councillor Helen Kane.
I would like to declare an interest on 2 items, 10 and 11. There are no pecuniary, I have no business dealings with, but I do know the applicant. But there's no pecuniary, never had any business dealings with the applicant. But I call them in.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. The same as Councillor Kane, we know the person, but we have it's a non-pecuniary interest, pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Is there any other business?
No, Chairman.
Thank you. The Epping Forest District Council Planning Policy Briefing note is for noting. Thank you. Is anyone requesting a site visit to any of the upcoming applications? Right, thank you. So we move on then to item 9, which is planning application EPF 2036/20, Roydon Marina Village, High Street, Roydon, Harlow, CM19 5EJ, on pages 23 to 40 of the agenda.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application to extend an existing marina to provide 168 additional berths, 99 new parking spaces, various associated facilities, and widening and improvement to an existing vehicular and pedestrian access. So this is a general indication of the site layout. The blue area is the land owned and controlled by the applicant. The red is what's considered as part of the application. The aerial photograph shows the site. The access to the marina is along the river or canal here with a single track road in some areas. The actual marina is in this area here where you can see the boats. And the new works will be in this area here, plus on the entrance road in this area here. Wider view of the area showing the site in relation to Roydon. View looking across the marina, showing the existing parking, boat moorings rather than parking, and railway line in this area here, an island to the south of the site. So this is the proposed road access widening plan, indicating how it's going to be widened with a new footpath. A number of trees will be removed to facilitate this. This is actually the road alongside the river that goes into the High Street at Roydon. This is the proposed boatyard and slipway in this area here, close to the island. You can see the slipway in this area here, and on this, where the cursor is, there will be a facilities building, which we'll see in a second. This shows the general layout of the new proposal. So these areas here are the new berths for the moorings. This is the facilities building with changing facilities, toilets, etc., which would be on the near the slipway. Current photographs showing the access, showing the relatively narrow access into and out of the site alongside the river, with passing places as well. Pictures of the access here with junction of the High Street, etc. And in just existing views of the marina and parking as well, showing the general site to the location. I'll just go back, that's probably the best one. So we have received a number of objections to the scheme. The Parish Council have objected. The report has only, for some reason, done a small segment of the Parish Council's objection. It has been circulated to all members by Democratic Services this week. I think it was 2.5 pages long, so it's quite a comprehensive objection to the scheme. The Lee Valley Regional Park originally put a holding objection in, but have now withdrawn that for the reasons laid out on page 32 and 33, and are now happy that, subject to various conditions, that they support the application. As you can see, there are a number of conditions on the property, on the application as well. So the main issues of this scheme are the impact on the green belt, the landscape, visual amenity of the area, and a number of issues around wildlife, conservation, ecology, the hydrology, rather unusually, loss of open water, etc., as laid out in the officer's report. From the point of view of the green belt, this is an appropriate development for outdoor sport and recreation within the green belt, and as long as it does not conflict with the purposes of including land within the green belt. So this is appropriate development, and it would be seen to be something that would not be controversial within the green belt because of the uses therein currently on the site, and that this fits into them as well. And you will also see that in the officer's report, the submitted version local plan, which we are waiting to be adopted, does state that the village will build on its key strengths, including the marina village, which is one of these key strengths for the actual village itself. The officer has looked at the impact on openness. It's quite clear 168 boats will have an impact on openness to a degree, but it's considered that this it wouldn't cause any significant further harm to the green belt, considering the site is already a marina. There was a previous application which had more boats, but that was refused, and this has actually reduced the amount of boats that would be in the scheme. There is also information provided that there is a need for this as there is a shortage of moorings within the London area, which includes both the upper River Lee navigation and the River Stort. It's considered that it is within the exception to the developments of the green belt, and while there is an impact in terms of the new boats and new carve movements, there is a need for the development, and this is a justifiable, very special circumstance. And in addition, the new local plan specifically promotes the marina as a key strength within Roydon, and this expansion would support this vision. In terms of the highway access, members will be aware from the site visit of the existing access into the site is by basically a single line track alongside the river, which is said with cyclists and pedestrians, and it's not particularly good existing situation. This would see it widened, a footpathing installed as well, and this is supported by the Canals and River Trust. Essex County Council have been consulted upon this, and they have said that the applicant has submitted a robust transport assessment, and it satisfies the highway authorities that both in terms of safety and capacity, the impact on the highway will be minimal, both within the immediate site and on the wider highway authority. It should be noted that on the previous scheme, which was refused, which had an extra 72 berths, the Highways Authority also found this to be acceptable. The officer has laid out the various comments from the Highways Authority on page 35, but it's clear there are no objections from the Highways. In terms of landscape and visual amenity, the site is well screened. It's clear there is a visual impact from the boats and the cars by their very nature, but it wouldn't be excessive when viewed from outside the site due to the topography and layout of the site. And the Tree and Landscape Officer has no objections to the scheme subject to relevant conditions. In terms of the impact on wildlife conservation and ecology, these are laid out on page 36 and page 37. But all of the ecological bodies that have been consulted and responded have raised no objection to the scheme, and it's considered that therefore it's acceptable in terms of its impact on the ecology of the site and wildlife conservation issues more generally. It's considered there's also no adverse impact on residential amenity. As I said, somewhat surprising, or somewhat unusually rather, we've got a hydrology section, which is something that we don't normally have, but the Canal and Rivers Trust, who are the experts in this area, have raised no objection to the scheme on water resource grounds, etc., so there's no problem with that. There are concerns that the proposal may result in a small area of open water because it's obviously taking up another half of the lake area for moorings as a very rough estimate. But it is one of a similar number within the area and accessible through the Lee Valley Regional Park. And it is considered that this doesn't affect the attractiveness of the park for visitors, and the Lee Valley Regional Park have certainly not objected. Comments have been made about potential residential use or alleged residential use on the site. The enforcement team have no current complaints on the site, and it has been investigated in the past and no breaches were found. And finally, the Epping Forest SAC and air quality, this has been assessed and it is considered that it is acceptable. An impact would be negligible, and to deal with this, the condition does include an obligation that 10% of the parking bays will be electronic vehicle charging points. So with the officer's comprehensive report weighing up the pros and cons, and it is considered that on balance that it is an acceptable scheme and it's not inappropriate development within the green belt. Therefore, the recommendation subject to the various conditions is to approve.
Thank you. We have three speakers on this application, and the first is Mr. Mark Reynolds, who's an objector. Can I just remind you again, you have, to activate your microphone when you speak, switch it off when you're finished, and you have 3 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Mark Reynolds, and I've lived as a neighbour to this marina for 9 years. I object to the proposal, and all points raised are ones that I'm witness to rather than hearsay. The planning officer has applied policies from the FDC local plan to their decision making, which I'll reference. Highways and safety. 9 weeks ago, I was knocked off my bicycle by a truck on the towpath, and it was only my helmet that saved me from far more serious injury. The driver is a resident at the marina, and the proposal will increase the risk of such incidents as it promotes vehicles over pedestrians and cyclists. The highway code designates pedestrians and cyclists at top of the road user highway hierarchy. This application provides an unprotected 90cm footway that can only be used single file. Currently, pedestrians pass each other on opposite sides of the towpath, and the proposal will increase the risk of people being forced to walk directly in the flow of traffic. This is contrary to ST4's reference to road hierarchy, as well as ST2, which refers to safe access for pedestrians and cyclists. It is accessibility. It is claimed that the development will promote walking and cycling. This is not supported by the lack of secure, sheltered facilities of cyclists, with car park spaces being given priority, which contravenes ST2. Residential use. The planning officer states the use of the marina for residential mooring, brackets houseboats, would have significantly more impact on the locality. On my regular commute from Roydon Station, there are passengers that I know live at the marina under the 28-day recreational use rule. This allows someone to be away for one weekend a month, therefore facilitating use of their boat as their main residence or houseboat that they travel to work from. These boats are non-permanent dwellings in the green belt that GB5 states should be refused. Hydrology. There are current water level issues caused by the use of the marina lock. This prevents people using their boats when they are grounded on the river bottom. RST7 refers to no adverse impact on water levels of the River Stort, and the Canal and River Trust stipulated that they would not object to the proposal if a back pump was installed. The planning officer has failed to include this as a condition. FSAC and air quality. The environmental impact has been misrepresented and does not take into account the true number of vehicle movements. The license plate recognition cameras at the marina should be used to provide accurate data pertaining to this. Also, the decision does not take into account the impact of the smoke from a further 168 solid fuel stoves, which are the principal form of heating for many boats. On the vision for Roydon, the officer has placed emphasis on how the proposal is in line with the vision for Roydon in the SVLP, with no evidence to support this. And as a local, I can confidently say that few villages are employed by the marina, and little money from the marina is actually spent within the local community. I would therefore encourage the committee to refuse this application, or at the very least insist on far more stringent conditions being put in place.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Roydon Parish Council, Councillor Roberto Lagna Fieta. Is that right? Am I any good at that? Near enough? We'll remind you again to activate your microphone when you speak and switch it off when you're finished, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
So I'm Councillor Lani Fieta, and I'm speaking on behalf of Roydon Parish Council in objection to the application on 4 points: traffic, residential use, accessibility and the local plan. The Parish Council's detailed traffic count from 2016, made available to the committee, looked at traffic movements in all directions from the towpath and the High Street junction. Approximately 25% of all movements at this junction travelled on the towpath. We believe the traffic levels have since increased. I personally counted 60 vehicle movements along the towpath in less than an hour during a site visit with the applicant at 1 p.m. on Thursday, the 29th of October 2020. We strongly disagree with the view that this application will only add minimal traffic to the site, and additionally believe that the applicant's traffic survey analysis does not allow for the impact that level crossing has on the free flow of traffic. The Parish Council is aware that there are full-time occupied boats on site. In the past month, we have been approached by a resident of the marina to request an allotment in Roydon, admitting they live there. Condition 14, as proposed by the officer, is the same condition applied to the previously agreed planning permission. As the above example shows, it is clearly easy to circumvent this condition, as there is little to no monitoring in place, nor do the requirements adequately stop someone from living in the marina, even if they move off site for a weekend a month. We appreciate that the site does include some permanent residences. Even allowing for this, the Parish Council's traffic report shows a pattern of travel suited to a residential site rather than a holiday or leisure site. This application is unique in that the access road is the Stort Navigation's towpath. The junction is with the High Street, adjacent to an unsighted level crossing over a bridge. It is single track and will remain so in places for 54 metres, as acknowledged in the transport assessment. The track will be 3.1 metres wide at points. The average car is 1.8 metres wide. The officer's report claims that because no accidents have been reported in the past 5 years in the vicinity of the site, this shows that the access is working safely. This confidence has recently been shown to be misplaced when a van crashed, causing it to enter the river. I understand photos of this have been sent to the committee. It is important to note that this accident occurred at the point where the vehicle was approaching the bridge, which cannot be widened. So any further increase in traffic will likely result in more accidents of this nature. Finally, the report refers to the vision for Roydon in the local plan, which includes the marina as a key strength. It is claimed that its expansion supports this vision. However, there is no evidence to support this. We believe the reverse is true, and the expansion would destroy the marina's positive aspects and harm Royden's rural and local character as envisaged in the plan. Indeed, the report admits this application will impact negatively on the green belts, which again the local plan states should be reserved. We ask the committee that based on these objections, along with the objection of the residents of Royston, that this application is refused.
Thank you very much. Our final speaker on this application is the applicant's agent, Mr. Stephen Rice. Again, I'll remind you to switch on your microphone and switch it off when you're finished. You have 3 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Stephen Rice and I'm the planning consultant who prepared and submitted the application on behalf of the clients, Lakeland Leisure. Your officer's report confirms that this proposal, which is significantly reduced in size to the previous proposal, refused in 2016, falls within one of the permitted exceptions under policy DM4 of the local plan and 149B of the MPPF. Furthermore, any limited impact on the openness of the Greenbelt is offset by the very special circumstances, which is the evidence provided by ourselves in terms of demand, which is backed up by the CRT's latest report on mooring demand in this region, which confirms demand is significantly outstripping supply of recreational moorings. I would like to reiterate the applicants, Lakeland Leisure Estates Limited, are a family-operated business who operate recreational holiday parks. They bought the site 4 years ago. They only operate recreational parks. This is not for residential use. The proposal will also help to safeguard the economic viability of the whole park and create 8 new employment opportunities. The applicants have recently agreed with the Canal and River Trust that they are permitted to enforce the no parking restrictions on the access road on behalf of the Trust. This has been a problem to date. They will install ANPR cameras and will be issuing fines to anybody parking illegally on that access road. Preventing this illegal parking will significantly improve the flow of traffic, and this, in addition to the proposed improvements and widening, we believe will alleviate the concerns that have previously been raised by the locals. I will just pick up on the van that went into the river last week. It happened on the stretch of road before the bridge. That is exactly the stretch of road that is due to be widened. They will also replace the timber bollards with reflectors on the canal side. Although the previous owners had installed these, they have over the years been damaged primarily by moorers using them to make fast their boats. Network Rail also have no objection to this application. The safety of all users on the access is of paramount importance to the applicants. They are operating a recreational business that relies on positive feedback from their customers. The cost of making these improvements, which include the purchase of additional land from a neighbour, are considerable, and the revenue from the additional moorings will help this family-owned business make this investment to improve the access, along with an ongoing programme of investment in the park to improve facilities and the environment for the benefit of wildlife and users. I very much hope that the committee can support the proposal and approve in line with their officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Sam Kane. If you turn your microphone off, please, Mr. Rice. Mr. Rice. You turn your microphone off, please.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, apologies for lateness. I've just come hot foot from Heathrow, so apologies for my presentation. As I missed the beginning of this item, I won't be taking part in the conversation, nor will I be voting.
Noted, thank you. Councillor Sartin.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, this is a site that I am very familiar with. I know the area well. I can understand the applicant's desire to expand the amount of availability for boats to use the marina. I am aware of the Canals and Rivers Trust work that has been done on the lack of facilities nearer into London, and that boats are moving further and further out. But these are mainly residential boats that people looking to be able to reside on the boats. That's just my comment on that part of it. As far as the application in total, I was slightly concerned that the plan of the marina itself, and perhaps if Mr. Godden could bring that up again, only showed the proposed extension. It didn't give any indication of what was already there. and from that picture actually you get a full idea of what is there. But you know, you're only looking at what is a fairly small area that is shown. All of the bit to the east, I suppose it is, of that new bit is already fully covered with moorings, so that it is a large area already covered. I'm concerned that we are taking away the openness of the remainder of that water to a lesser extent than was on the original application that was put in 2016, I believe it was. But it still is taking away from the openness of the green belt, the open water area. It's also putting in some new build, which was not put forward in the previous applications, both the facilities building and the area for the boat repairs. So you are getting built up pieces of extra onto that bit there. Looking down, we saw, when I looked through the various papers on the planning application, there were photographs showing the marina from above, but it wasn't as far above as you can go. The ridge higher up does give you a much clearer view of the marina than those photos showed, and it will cover a lot more water. It is a recreational area. It should be being used for recreation, and part of the recreation that it's used for at the moment is for the Ware Fishing Club, as I understand it, so that although I'm told they still will have the opportunity to use the water, the amount of water available for fishing will be reduced considerably, and it is part of recreation. So you're giving more space to one form of recreation but taking away from something else. If I can now turn to the roadway itself, that I feel is an even bigger issue, an issue of greater concern, because although proposals are put in to widen the road and to provide a footpath, that isn't going to be possible for the full length of the towpath. It is a towpath. It's very much a shared roadway or towpath. It's used by cyclists, by walkers, and by the vehicles. And I have to say, and this isn't part of a planning condition, planning areas at all, but vehicles do not take enough care always in the way in which they use that road. There are periods when there are absolute chaos. I was down there with our youth council on Tuesday morning, and there at one point was complete snarl up with two very heavy HGV type vehicles trying to get down, with cars coming both ways at the same time. I think the agent made reference to where the van went into the water as being part of the bit that will be widened. I didn't get that impression because that's directly opposite the path down to take the towpath around the river itself. So that, I just query that, but I do know that it's not going to be possible to widen the whole length of the towpath just because of property ownership as you get further down. And I have concerns again of the junction. There is the issues of cars coming over the level crossing. If one car at the front wants to turn right into the marina, I think it's more by luck than judgment that we haven't had an accident there up to this point, because cars back up, they get perhaps onto the crossing because they're not aware that the car at the front is waiting to turn right or is going to want to turn right. There are a lot of issues around that road which I am surprised that highways have not actually raised some of those issues. I will stop there and give other members an opportunity to, if they wish to come in on this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Avey.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm aware of this site. I actually walked my dog down there, even though I apologise I had COVID and missed the site inspection, so my apologies for that. But I have walked down there and had a look. Reading the papers, listening in particular to the parish council, I think access is still a problem. Whatever they do, I think that's going to be a problem. In fact, when I was walking my dog, I was aware our dog nearly got run over by a car shooting through. So I don't know what they're going to do, but it doesn't strike me what's planned is going to be possible or deal with some of the issues. And again, And we've seen it a number of times in applications. Essex highways really don't ever seem to get to grips with any issues, quite frankly. If it's a man sitting in Chelmsford looking at Google Maps, I don't think that's sufficient. And therefore I take anything they say with a pinch of salt, quite frankly. One thing I'm really concerned about, and I just don't see how they'd stop this, or in fact, if the intention is to stop it, and I don't buy this as recreational, I think it's residential use, these boats, and it strikes me that this will become a floating housing estate in all but name, frankly, which is unacceptable. And again, on the green belt issue, we spend a lot of time being told by the planning officers that we are refusing an application because of impact on the green belt. Yet here, we're told there is no impact or some impact, but it's okay. I can't believe we're going soft on the green belt with this request. And I think there will definitely be an impact on the local area and the green belt. And therefore, on those issues, I will not be supporting this application.
Thank you. Councillor Helen Kane.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to echo what my colleague said, because that was what I was going to say. There are two issues here. One is the traffic. The road is very narrow, and the other one is it is in green belt, and I actually object to this application.
Thank you very much. Right, so if we go to a vote then. Sorry, Councillor Sartin.
Sorry, Chairman, if I can come back. Obviously, this is an application for to grant permission, although albeit it is a balanced decision on the officer's part. But if this application were to be approved, I would like to see a condition added to it that meant that the widening of the road, the work on the road, should be done before any work starts at all on any of the bringing in of the marina construction materials and build.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And can I just make one other comment that on the conditions as they stand, I was surprised at the number of conditions that had the word prior to first occupation, prior to commencement of the development, etc. An awful lot still seems to have been agreed before this application, before the work on this application were to go forward. And I would have thought some of those things should have been part of the discussions with officers before it got to a planning application coming to members.
Mr. God.
Well, it'd normally be because they're not policy issues, they're kind of technical issues that can be resolved. It would be why those conditions are on.
Right, thank you. So if we go to a vote then, the officer's recommendation is to approve this application. All those in favour?
It's one, Chairman.
Thank you. Those against?
It's 5, Chairman.
Thank you. Abstentions?
It's 1.
Thank you. Therefore, that application has been refused contrary to the recommendation. What?
No, it hasn't.
No, it hasn't. No, it's going to DDMC now.
No. Someone needs to now make a recommendation to refuse it because it's not been granted permission.
Right.
We haven't refused it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And we need the reason for refusing.
Right, okay. Right, so can I have a proposer for the reason that this application has been refused? Councillor Sartin.
Thank you, Chairman. As we know that there was a similar application that came before District Development Control in 2016, but for a larger number of berths, but not so very big a difference. I can't see any reason why the two reasons for refusal at that time could not be the same for this particular application. The first reason at that time was the proposed development which will enable the intensive use of the whole of the lake for the mooring. Now, I would perhaps rephrase that slightly. The intensive use of more of the lake for the mooring of boats will result in the loss of the existing attractive open water area and an increase in traffic movements along the narrow towpath access road, albeit that this towpath has a proposal to be widened. This would also increase parking around the lake, which takes away the openness of the green belt. These changes will adversely impact on the openness, character and visual amenity of the area and undermine the recreational value of the lake and surrounding area for the existing boat owners, local residents and visitors to the Lee Valley Regional Park. It represents inappropriate development in the metropolitan green belt, and there are no special circumstances to outweigh the resultant harm or any other of the identified harms. Is that acceptable to Mr. Godden?
Is that just the one reason then?
Sorry? Oh,
Yeah, sorry, is that one reason for refusal?
that was as one reason.
Yeah. Sorry.
So there is also the reason around the traffic movements up and down the towpath, albeit a proposed widened towpath, but still having a shared space for pedestrians, cyclists and vehicles within what would still be, albeit a widened area, would still be a comparatively narrow area for passing of larger vehicles and pedestrians and cyclists at any one time. And the wording that would be detrimental to highway and pedestrian safety.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy with that. I'll get it.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah, so there's two reasons. One is the impact on green belt, the other is the impact on highway safety. Members should vote on that as their reasons for refusal. So it needs to be proposed, as Councillor Sartin has, for reasons for refusal, then the vote taken.
Yeah. I need a seconder for that as well.
Yeah, they will, yeah. Well, someone needs to propose it and second it. I think you should be proposing it. You're the chairman.
I propose that.
No, you should just ask members or I've got a proposer for that.
Yeah. So, members, is there a proposer for that?
Apologies, Chair. Sorry, it's Andrew Marks on the Zoom call. I'm on the Zoom call, it's Andrew Marks. Sorry, Chair, in the absence of a signed Section 106 agreement for the SAC also needs to be a reason for refusal.
Right, thank you. So, are you proposing that, Councillor Sartin? And Councillor Helen Kane seconded it. So, do we need to vote on that? Yep. Refusal. So, if we can, a show of hands to accept that motion and take it to the DDMC.
Sorry, 6, Chairman.
Thank you. Those against?
None, Chairman.
Abstentions?
1, Chairman.
Thank you. It's got to DDMC, isn't it?
No, it's just
So I thought, yeah. Right. No, so right, thank you. So therefore, that application has been refused. So moving on. By the way, yeah, if any members of the public wish to leave, they can. Thank you. Back to the beginning now. Right, so.
No, sorry. That's...
Right. Item 10 is planning application EPF 1213/21, land off Arlingham Mews, Sun Street, Waltham Abbey, EN9 1ED, on pages 41 to 50 of the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. Just one moment while I sort this out. Right, this is an application within the urban area town centre of Waltham Abbey. It's an application for the change of use of ground floor retail units, that's an A1 class, to one studio and 2 one-bedroom units, dwelling bedrooms. Sorry, dwelling units. As you can, I'll just share the thing, which I haven't done. Okay, so the site is fairly unusual. It's a landlocked site with buildings on all sides in Arlington Mews, which is approached through Sun Street. Currently, they're retail units, and the application will see the properties there at the front converted to residential. So this is the existing ground floor plans of the site, and that's the proposed ground floor plans of the site. There's some very minor external works in this area here. Oops, sorry. And this area here to do it, but most of the works are internal. This rough plan shows that these are the outlined in red are the units being converted to residential units, and the ones in green will be retained as shops. So the proposed and bottom elevations, not considerably significant difference in terms of elevation, etc. But you'll see it obviously changing the shop frontage there to more of residential type frontage, and indeed the same in the bottom units as well. The photograph shows entrance from Sun Street into the Mews itself, and then the view from Derby Drive, again entrance. So existing units, these ground floors will be converted, looking through the Mews towards Derby Drive, and again Unit 9. And then you've got Unit 15, so these will be converted with these units. So the photographs show the view through the Mews itself and the very close form of development within this area. We have received, just one moment, we've received no response from Waltham Abbey Town Council and no response from the 20 neighbours consulted. Officers are recommending refusal for this application on the grounds of policy. The area is within the key shop frontage of Waltham Abbey Town Centre. Policy TC1 of the adopted local plan defines Waltham Abbey as one of the 3 principal town centres in the district. And policy TC3 states that while residential accommodation will be permitted in appropriate location in town centres, this will not be at the ground floor, and any proposal that could have a detrimental impact on the viability and vitality of the centre will be refused. Policy E2 of the emerging 2017 submission version local plan again identifies Waltham Abbey as a district centre and shows that the application site and development site falls within the primary shopping area, primarily shopping frontage. You can see from the officer's report the issues are laid out, but basically it is unacceptable to lose these retail units in a primary shopping frontage, a key retail area, and have them converted to residential uses. So it is contrary to our policies both in the existing plan and the submission version local plan. The site is also within the conservation area, and the conservation area has commented, as you can see on page 48, that the changes will not preserve or enhance the Waltham Abbey conservation area, and her recommendation is for refusal, as laid out there. Officers have also looked at the quality of the 3 residential units. In flat 1, it is considered that there is considerable issues in terms of the equality for the accommodation of any occupier. The same in number 2, leading both of these having unacceptable levels of privacy because of the way the properties are. And flat 3 also has significant issues in terms of its size, overlooking and the closeness to the other buildings within the Mews, and all 3 of them have got basically within a shopping and retail centre literally at their front door, and it's considered this would have an unacceptable impact on the quality of accommodation for future occupiers. Other issues aren't particularly an issue. We would also need a Section 106 agreement, even if this were to be considered acceptable, to deal with the impact on the Epping Forest SAC, and we haven't got one of those as well. So basically there are, let's get back. There's 4 reasons for refusal recommended by the officers, but it's the loss of the ground floor retail units, the adverse impact on the conservation area, the adverse impact on anybody who was going to be living in these properties, and the lack of a Section 106 agreement to deal with the SAC. So the officer's recommendation is to refuse.
Thank you. We have one speaker on this application, which is the applicant's agent, and that's Mr. Dominic Padalino. Thank you again. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, members. This evening you are presented with an application which was submitted to the Planning Department, and we understand the application is recommended for refusal. Arlington Mews was built in 1986, and over the years it has always struggled to keep tenants long-term due to the lack of street presence and the link from Derby Drive to Sun Street, which is rarely used, unlike the other links which are more prominent from the car park in Derby Drive. There has always been short-term lets, 3 to 6 months maximum, and there's always been rent arrears experienced by landlords due to the type of tenants this Mews has attracted over the years. Landlords have taken risks due to the lack of demand by the better calibre of tenants. The scheme presented to you this evening is proposing to convert the inner retail office and retail units into flats in the inner courtyard, which have been vacant for over 18 months. Our client purchased the site vacant. The applicant has carried out considerable remodelling of the Mews by changing some of the shop fronts to face Derby Drive, and has managed to obtain long-term tenants on the other units, but the internal spaces have struggled to attract interest. The proposal to convert and extend these retail units will not only help to fill these voids, but they will also act as a secure and safe external space which currently does attract undesirable visitors carrying out illegal activities at night due to the lack of occupants in the adjacent premises. The introduction of residents will act as a preventative measure that will give the town centre more footfall needed to help the local businesses. The intention is to help the viability of the town centre, and it is important that we get the right mix of local amenities with residential properties. They both need each other to work and create a vibrant town centre. The proposals on the ground floor flats could be built to be disabled friendly, which would suit ambulant and elderly people, which could live in the town without the need to climb staircases, and most of the town centre accommodation is above commercial and retail shops on first and second floors. The scheme is a benefit to the town centre, creating much needed houses, bringing into use redundant buildings. We request the members look at this application and the merits of the scheme and its valuable contribution it would bring to the town centre, and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Helen Kane.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I actually called in this application because it is my ward. I know the area very, very well. And I tried with other people to actually make sure that there is occupation in these shops. If Jerry could actually, the planning officer, could go back to the pictures, please, of the inner, and it shows the shops. You can see clearly that they are all empty, and they are empty all the time. The shops that they seem to be full are the ones that they face Sun Street and the ones that they face down here, the other side. But as you can, yes, if we can have another look, these are all empty shops, and they are no good to anyone. It's just the people there in the evening. I don't want to mention what they are doing, but the police has been called quite a few times. I think that it is important that we actually have a proper balance between the shops and the residents, and I don't think that inside the Mews will actually have an impact. As the history shows, they're all empty, and they have been empty for months upon months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to agree with Councillor Kane, having lived in Waltham Abbey since 1981, permanently that is, I've been there 70 years. Very rarely any of these shops keep anybody in them. We've had fishing shops, wool shops, everything I can think of. There's just not the footfall in Waltham Abbey, unfortunately, because there's no traffic. And I would rather they be used for people to live in. We're still retaining the shop frontage on Derby Drive and on Sun Street. But I personally don't object at all to them being made for somewhere for youngsters to live. We seem to be very short of small places. So I'm afraid I would have to go against the officers on this.
Thank you. Councillor Sam Kane.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I take to task some of the definitions used in these refusals. The idea that Arlington Mews is primary retail frontage, for anyone who actually knows the town knows that is a joke. It's not primary retail anything. Sun Street is your frontage, and the side streets get any traffic as a result of people coming from Derby Drive car park, and people coming from Derby Drive car park do not go through Arlington Mews. You'd have to have a specific reason to go to Arlington Mews, and there aren't any. Those people who have tried to run a business in there have all struggled. Next thing I'll take issue with is actually coming back to that primary retail frontage. It's my understanding in the emerging local plan that Waltham Abbey has actually been downgraded to a second tier town centre, and that allows for a higher percentage mix of retail with domestic, I believe. So it's not one of the three major town centres now, according to the emerging local plan. On the design and proposed use, would fail to preserve or enhance the existing buildings and yards. From the pictures you show me, nothing's changed. They've taken away a shop window and put in two other windows. It's hardly preserving the character of something that's barely 30 years old. It's just bizarre that we should choose a reason like that to refuse something. And the third one, by reason of design and layout, the proposed development would provide poor levels of outlook and privacy. Well, I've never seen that one before as a reason for refusing an application. That's a completely new one on me. We often look at the internals and are told, well, it's up to spec, and that's all we need to know. It's the right size, even if it's minimum shoebox size. Well, it's within bounds, so it's fine. But all of a sudden, we're worried about future residents' outlook and privacy. New one on me. The last one, Section 106, with consideration for the SAC. Yeah, absolutely. We need to have that in place. So I'd agree with the fourth one. The other three I just don't follow at all. Sorry.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Sorry, Councillor Durrell.
Thank you, Chairman. As another fairly long-term resident of Waltham Abbey, I'd share my fellow councillors' comments about how difficult it is to get a business going in Arlingham Mews. I personally hardly ever go in there, and I don't see how any business would go there. However, I do find the comments about quality of accommodation, they do look a bit pokey to me, and we do have things like overlooking to consider. And also, there's no consideration of any sort of parking. And as we know, public transport in Waltham Abbey is pretty terrible at the best of times. You'd basically just be stuck in the middle of town, and I don't know how you would deal with that unless you were taking up places in the other major car parks, which we definitely wouldn't want. So while I share the concerns about Arlingham Mews, I'm still probably against this particular scheme in the current form.
Councillor Lee and then Councillor Van.
I would just like to come back on that. Now nobody's going out to work because they're all sitting at home working from home. Our car parks are stood empty apparently, and they're trying to get people to use them. So I don't think I could refuse the application on the grounds of there's no parking. because the car parks are stood empty, and there's, we hope, a plan being put in place for permits for local people.
Thank you. Councillor Helen Kay.
First of all, there is a car parking on Derby Drive. And second, they are in the centre of the town as well. So they can walk to the shops. There's, you know, that is the issue here, is to actually people having access to the shops locally, so they don't need their cars to go to the big supermarkets and shop locally.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very difficult one for me because I think my fellow Waltham Abbey councillors make some really valid points, but I can also see the officers, how they've come to the conclusion they've come to. I think it's a very difficult situation when we start looking at residential coming into high streets. Waltham Abbey High Street has been struggling for decades, and if we potentially introduce more residential into the high street, are we at the top of a slippery slide that spells the end for the high street altogether? For me personally, I'd perhaps like to see these used more for like a commercial or office-based use rather than residential. But I am aware that these things have been tried and failed in the past, so it's a very difficult one at the moment, and yeah, I'm still kind of undecided as and just listening to other people's views on it.
Thank you. Councillor Sam Cone.
Thank you. Just coming back on Councillor Matthews' point there, the death of the high street is empty shops.
Councillor Lee.
Obviously, none of these have been there long enough to know, but what is now the carpet shop in the centre of Suntree used to be 2 cottages with gardens in the front. So putting back a couple more living accommodations doesn't make it. I would rather they be used than stood empty. They're not in a prime spot like in a main high street, because one, there's no traffic, so there's hardly any footfall either. And I would rather someone have somewhere to live. Yes, they are small, too small for what I would want, but I'm sure there's lots of young people that would give their eye teeth to have a room of their own.
Thank you. Councillor Sartin.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to what's been said. I fully understand the reasons for the comments from other members. I had a really good look at the plans on the council's website, and I was concerned by the way in which there was lack of outlook, as suggested in one of them, the overlooking by some of them. I know it is a very cramped space area that they're trying to put living accommodation into. I just also wondered about natural light, because although there is open air from above, it's still got space building above it. It's a ground floor with first floor above, and a fairly narrow area for natural light to come in. So I do have concerns around the living conditions for the people who may in the future be living in those properties. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right then, members, it's the officer's recommendation to refuse permission. Those in favour?
To refuse.
To refuse permission.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Those against? Against refusal?
Against the officers.
Yeah.
It's 3. There's
Abstentions?
That's 1. It's refused.
So therefore that application is refused. Thank you. Right, item 11 is EPF 1503/21, number 1 Derby Drive, Waltham Abbey, EN91EQ.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a an application for the erection of a 1.5-storey extension to a restaurant, internal alterations to the existing retail unit to provide staff amenity, revised application to a 2020 application. This is actually very close to Arlington Mews, which was in this area here, but the area is property on the corner here, and the area to be developed is in this area to the north of it. Right, so this is the existing block plan. This area here is car parking at this stage, and this would see this half of the area being taken up by the extension. So slightly bigger view of the extension from the above. This is the existing property, and this is the proposed. So you have this 1.5-storey extension here joined by a link to the existing property in this area here. And you can see the plan there, the building line maintained on the front in the shop and the abilities there, and some internal works to the main building. So there's some photographs of the site showing the area which would be developed. This photograph appears to have some form of artificial turf down, as you can see in this picture as well, and that picture. Also, though, the street scene picture shows, then this is a 2020 photograph showing the site of the area where the informal or where the parking is going on. Just a minute. We have received the following comments on this scheme: no objection from the Town Council and no objection from Essex Highways. In this instance, as with the last application, the officer's recommendation is to refuse. The main issues and considerations here are the appearance of the conservation area, parking provision and employment issues. In terms of the conservation area, there have been 6 previous applications on this site, 5 of which have been refused, 2 of which have been appealed and then dismissed. One of the applications was held in abeyance due to the Epping Forest sack, which was then called in by members to be decided before the area planning subcommittee. As part of the reason for refusal of those previous applications, an identified harm to the character and appearance of the conservation was one of the reasons. So this, as you can see there, the officer then discusses this, but looking at this particular scheme, the conservation officer is of the opinion that there is no harm, and indeed that this new building would preserve the character of the conservation area. So we then turn to the parking issues, and it's clear that the development of the site will include the loss of commercial parking as well as the introduction of a new A1, A2 use with no parking provision. A1 is retail use and A2 is office use. The transport assessment provided that these areas are only currently used by the grace of the landowner, who could remove them at any time. This does not remove the fact that this is what the land is utilised for and has been established as part of the site's planning history. So as you can see there, the officer then carries on at page 55 and 56, discussing the concerns about the parking as well. And it is considered that the scheme is identical to the previously refused 2020 scheme, and the same transport statement has been submitted alongside this current application. And there have been no alterations to try and overcome that reasons for refusal. And the officers are of the opinion that it is contrary to the reasons laid out in the local plan. Sorry, that's from the inspector, who looked at the 2030 application. From an employment issues, it would make a modest contribution to employment within Waltham Abbey, which lends moderate weight to it. In terms of the SAC, it is within 6.2 kilometres of the SAC, but we have an interim monitoring strategy, interim mitigation strategy, I should say, which would deal with this. And it's not considered that it would be particularly harmful to that, and indeed the wouldn't affect the SAC due to the net increase in the vehicular traffic found on the site. So the officer's conclusion is that the proposal will introduce a car-free development within an area, as well as displacing existing parking used for the existing businesses in the town centre, resulting in a significant demand for on-street parking in the locality. and as that result, the proposal would fail to preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area and and be harmful to highway safety. Therefore, the officer's recommendation is to refuse, as for that one reason as laid out on page 52.
Thank you. Again, we have one speaker for this, and that again is Mr. Dominic Padalino.
Good evening, members. Again, the application before you this evening is on a site which has had previous planning applications over the past few years. In August 2018, an application was presented to this committee, which was for the new retail unit in the same location. The planners concerned and raised various objections, one reason being the loss of parking and the SAC issues. We discovered today that this application was disposed of. The application should have been presented back to the committee once the SAC matters were resolved. Our client waited patiently. We continually asked for updates before the COVID pandemic, and after we went back to work after lockdown, no updates were given on when the application would be taken back to committee. We now know the reasons why. It was agreed by the committee that the site was private and the applicant could develop the site rather than be required to leave this space in order that the public could illegally park. Due to mounting pressure by two tenants next door, the Opticians and Ting Tong Cafe, both needing more floor space, our client requested a fresh planning application be submitted for an extension to the adjacent cafe. The application was validated on the 8th of July 2021, 9 months ago. This would assist the tenants to retain and expand their businesses in the town centre. Our client is keen to retain both tenants in the town centre. The Opticians taking a small area off the cafe once they occupy the new extension. As you can see from the timelines, this project has faced significant delays, and we wish it to be determined so the project can be progressed, built and occupied. This project is not a large housing development on a postage stamp. It's for a modest retail unit of 600 square feet on brownfield land. There is no short-term gain for the applicant, it's long-term, and it will help retain two established businesses. We request that the committee look at the benefits of this proposal, which will have to the town centre, as we look to encourage businesses to expand, not lose them due to the lack of space. We request that the committee overturn the recommendation and vote to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hellingham.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I actually called in this one as well, and that is because if we go back again, could you put the planning officer show us the parking facilities, please? There are some pictures with cars. That's it, okay. As you can see, in 2019, there was an application was approved because we actually, as a committee, we made absolutely certain that this is not a parking for, it was never designated as a parking space, it is not an EFTC car park, it was just an empty space. And the people illegally are actually, if we can see, there are yellow lines and they are parking there. So it is not going to be anything at all with the loss of parking for businesses. The other thing is we're trying very hard in Waltham Abbey to maintain shops and maintain businesses. And we have the opticians that they need extra space, and we have that restaurant. That restaurant, where the turf is, the green turf, they have because of COVID, they put a marquee there, and it's very, very popular. So I think that it will not have an impact. That road is not a main road, that's a side road that it's Derby Drive and goes into the proper EFTC car parking at the back. So I just would like our members to reconsider this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Before Helen spoke, I was just going to say about the restaurant, where that you've got that green artificial grass. That's been a big marquee there for months and months that is used for the extension because it's a Thai restaurant, I think, which is extremely popular, and they really do need the space. The marquee's fine in the nice weather, but obviously in the winter you wouldn't want to sit outside in a marquee. And as Helen says, Councillor Kane says, it's never actually been, the fact there's a couple of cars park on it, it's never actually been a car park. The land is owned by the people who own those buildings, and they just want to utilise what they've got for the benefit of the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sam Kane.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm afraid I'm another one. I just can't. I can't agree with these reasons for refusal at all. If I can just clarify, the opening line reads, the proposal will introduce a car-free development into the area. Is that a bad thing to introduce a car-free development into the area? I thought that was the object of the exercise of going green and saving the planet. And from that point of view, it's exactly what we're doing. Any additional parking that would be required is for, what, 2, 3, 4 cars? There is free parking just down the road. There is also a council car park a little further down the road. This is not going to cause any congestion. It's certainly not going to be harmful to highway safety. I just cannot agree with the reason for refusal, so I won't be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chair. I will echo what Councillor Kane has just said. He's pretty much mentioned what I was going to say. I'm personally struggling to follow our policy on parking because we seem to be introducing or proposing and supporting applications around the district without parking, and then in this case we're going against it. So that's a bit of a struggle for me. I would recommend officers to come down to Waltham Abbey and look at the parking situation there. I parked in a car park today which could easily park 150 vehicles, and I was the only one in it in the middle of the day. There is not any issues with regard to parking in Waltham Abbey. We've got multiple car parks that we're struggling to get people into, and our objective at the Town Council is to try and get people into Waltham Abbey and fill these car parks up. So if this is the only reason the officers have to refuse, then unfortunately I won't be able to support the officers with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I must admit, I find it a bit of a strange reason to say we need to park 4 cars, and particularly given that it's been granted permission once. It's not going to, in my view, it's not going to damage the town centre. So again, I find it difficult to support the officer's recommendation. Anyway, members, if we vote, it is the officer's recommendation to refuse permission. All those in favour of that?
It's none, Chairman.
All those against?
It's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, so if we can have a reason then for our contrary stance with the officer's recommendation. Councillor Sam Kane.
I'll give it a stab. Effectively, none of us believe the reason for refusal given. We believe that it is not harmful to highway safety, that it won't cause street parking to be harmed. We just don't agree with the reason for refusal. Don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, Councillor, all you need to do is someone just needs to recommend this for approval. We would need to consider conditions, and then you would vote on that.
Sorry.
Well, I'm happy to recommend for approval.
Right, thank you. Right, so reasons then for this will be going forward to conditions. Sorry, our conditions that we need to.
Conditions, you're asking the tricky questions now. We have a standard sort of set of those which I'm sure you can complete far more efficiently than I can.
Yes, Councillor, but we do need to have them in the public domain. So our normal one would be that, or normal ones would be this should be carried out within 3 years, should be in line with the approved drawings. The materials should be agreed before the development of the site, and hours of use that would probably coincide, and I think members would need to say what hours of use they think should be done, and a refuse storage and removal condition. So those are the conditions I'd recommend. And if members are minded for that, we'd like to know, or the officers would like to know what hours you think would be reasonable.
Yeah, I would say 8 till 6, Monday to Friday. You're talking about for the development work, yeah?
No, I'm talking about the actual use as the cafe or whatever it is, the eatery.
Forgive me, isn't that a licensing condition rather than a planning condition? Sorry.
Well, you can do it if you feel it was necessary in there.
Surely it's already got its hours of business. Councillor Sartin.
Could it not be the hours that the current premises are already operating to?
Yes, that would be fine. Yeah, we can do that.
Right, so what are we doing now? Right.
What have we done? Sorry. Second to vote on that.
Right, so if we can vote on accepting those granting those conditions.
People in favour?
In favour? Against?
That's unanimous, Chair. So.
Abstentions, right. So this now goes forward, yeah? This is going forward now.
Yes, you voted to approve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so the result of that is that it is to grant permission. Is that it?
Yeah.
Is it? Don't have to go forward, is it?
No.
Right, that's it.
No, you can overturn that because there's no policy reason.
Right, thank you. Right, agenda item 12 then is EPF 1819/21, which is 168 Honey Lane, Waltham Abbey, EN93BE.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application to redevelop the site to remove the existing bungalow and erect 2 semi-detached houses. If members are minded to grant permission, it would be subject to a legal agreement, Section 106 legal agreement. This is the site in Honey Lane. No, yes, this is the site within Honey Lane on the south side of the area, close to, I think it's the Leverton Primary School, I believe. This is the existing bungalow on the site, quite a large bungalow in terms of its roof. And this would be the proposed block plan with that removed, with 2 semi-detached houses between number 170 and 162. These are the proposed plans showing an identical pair of semi-detached houses, front, side and back with the layouts. It's 2 flat roof dormers on the rear roof slope with a single-storey sloping roof extension on the back of the properties as well. This is the existing street scene, so this is the existing property between 2 detached houses of differing styles, and this would be the pair of semi-detached houses which would have a lower ridge line than the existing properties. Photograph of the site showing the bungalow in its context with the 2 neighbouring houses, and then down the wider street scene as well. I think it would be fair to say that there's quite the mix of housing within this particular area. There's no particular strong dominant theme. And houses on the opposite side, we have a mix of terrace, semi-detached, detached houses and bungalows. This is the rear garden area of the property, showing the neighbouring properties as well. So, we have received objections to the scheme. Just a moment. Waltham Abbey Town Council have objected due to the loss of light to neighbouring properties and being out of character with the street scene. We have 3 objections from other neighbours, including loss of a bungalow for self-gain, the character of the street compromised, overdevelopment, additional dwelling resulting greater number of vehicles in the road, blocking natural light, overbearing impact, dormers creating unacceptable invasion of privacy and air pollution on the forest. So the main issues in this case are, for most urban cases, are the impacts of the building on the street scene, the impact on the neighbours in terms of overlooking loss of light and sunlight, loss of a bungalow, parking and the sack in terms of the most important. This is previously developed land and it's urban land, so it is in principle terms acceptable to redevelop it and for have a denser form of development as well. It has had a previous application in 2021 to 2 semi-detached houses. This was appealed against, not because the local council had refused it, because of non-determination that the council hadn't decided it within the policy period. The inspector raised no objection to the redevelopment of the site, and in fact only refused the policy on SAC grounds in terms that there wasn't a Section 106 agreement. In terms of the loss of a bungalow, there is a policy, obviously, as you'll be aware, but it is an instance that the council has given weight to the fact the site has a prior approval consent to build an additional storey above the bungalow, turning it into a two-storey dwelling house. And additionally, the inspector at the appeal last year has raised no objection for the redevelopment of the site. And both of these are considered fallback positions, which would allow us to grant permission of the loss of the bungalow. In terms of design character and appearance within the street scene, as I've already alluded to, Honey Lane has got the eclectic mix of development, and it is considered that this scheme from the front would have no adverse impact to the street scene or to the character of the street scene at all. In terms of neighbouring amenity, in terms of overlooking and loss of light, the scheme has been developed using design principles, and it's considered that there would be no overlooking of any neighbouring property in terms of their rear elevations, and there would be no significant loss of light or sunlight that would justify a refusal in this case. In terms of the Epping Forest SAC, it is considered that they've gone through the various assessments, which is acceptable, but a Section 106 agreement would need to be signed before we could grant permission. So taking these all into consideration, the officer's recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the signing of a Section 106 agreement.
Thank you. Members? Councillor Sam Kane. Sorry? What?
We've got a speaker.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Yes, we have, indeed. Sorry, I do apologise. It's coming on Zoom. It's Mr. Stephen Cushel. Cushel, thank you. And he's on Zoom somewhere. Oh, no, that's Andrew, yeah.
He's on Zoom, I can see him.
There he is.
Oh, there, yeah.
Mr. Kushal is logged in and he was available earlier. I think it's just popped up. There we go. Thank you.
Hello.
Right, thank you. Yes, you have 3 minutes to make your presentation. You've got to go.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. As has been said, the site comprises a bungalow and a good-sized, wide plot in a row of two-storey detached and semi-detached properties. It has a side garage, open frontage, and a conservatory at the rear. We're seeking demolition of the bungalow and construction of a pair of semi-detached houses. Both properties would have 2 car parking spaces, utilising the existing vehicle access, along with the creation of a second access. The officer report sums up the design as follows. In terms of design and appearance, it is considered that the proposed dwellings are of a simple traditional design that would complement and enhance the appearance of the street scene and the wider area. They are also designed to be capable of accommodating people with accessibility needs, including the current and future needs of older people. They have an open layout, level threshold, and a ground floor shower/WC. They will have adequate space for disabled parking convenient to the front door, and they will meet lifetime home standards. Making the best use of land within the built-up area and adding to the housing stock is encouraged by national guidelines. We've worked with the officers to arrive at a scheme that will not have any adverse impact on residential amenities. There will be no overlooking or loss of light and privacy. A 1 metre gap is maintained on both sides. The officer report has identified the planning considerations, which include the loss of a bungalow and the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation. We have made the point that existing accommodation, although on 1 floor, is badly laid out and not easily capable of adaptation. We also have permission to build a single 2-storey dwelling. which would not be out of character in the street. It is, however, an ideal location for a pair of semi-detached houses. With regard to SAC, we understand the requirement for appropriate assessment in relation to both the recreational pressures and atmospheric pollution. The inspector on appeal was not satisfied that there was a fully complete obligation to mitigate against such impacts. We have actually now paid the council's legal costs and agreed an undertaking in principle to secure the financial contributions. We therefore ask the committee to support the scheme and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. So this time, members, Councillor Sam Kane.
Thank you. And in fact, this time it was me that called this one in. A couple of things. First of all, I had a call just yesterday from a resident who professes that didn't receive any notification of this meeting until Monday this week. When she phoned up about it, was advised there'd been problems with the post or whatever. I just wondered if officer could comment on that and on the validity of that period of time for preparation for residents.
Well, I don't know the actual ins and outs, but if it's been sent out, if it's been put in the post by the council, that's our obligation dealt with.
Understood. So we fulfilled our obligation.
Yeah.
I understand. With regard to the history of this development, the self-same application, albeit the only difference being the number of it, was the one that went to appeal for non-determination, and the non-determination was while waiting for a decision about the SAC. Yeah. So it went to appeal, and the inspector decided that there was a case to answer on the SAC side and refused it. Not to say he actually looked at the rest of the application and weighed up the balances. My concern here is the loss of the bungalow and how, by a tactical ploy, somewhat after the original application, I'm just judging by the numbers, the prior approval for the construction of additional storey effectively negates the policy in our local plan that says protect bungalows. Because anybody who has a bungalow who wants to do something else with it just has to go for prior approval, and we've got no argument. And it's just negated an entire policy in our local plan. And I wanted to make sure that members here had the opportunity to consider and discuss that and whether they thought it was appropriate. I'm of a mind, to be honest, to call the man's bluff and refuse this and say, go to your fallback position and build a second storey. That's my position.
Well, if he's got a prior approval, he's got a prior approval. That's the law of the land. It's like permitted development rights overwrite any local plan requirements unless you get an Article 4 position, an Article 4 order in place, which we clearly haven't got here. So, while I can understand your frustrations, there's nothing underhand about it. It's a perfectly legitimate way of dealing with this.
No, indeed, and as I say, that's why I wanted to bring it to committee, just to make people aware that this is an ability to bypass our local plan on this particular issue.
Councillor Obi?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'd agree with Councillor Kane, and I was very glad to see that provision was in the local plan to protect bungalows. As you know, in Epping we have a problem with people developing bungalows and trying to keep our bungalow stock. So I am concerned with this application going through and losing a bungalow. And frankly, I'm going to join Councillor Kane in calling the applicant's bluff by objecting to this application.
Councillor Sartin?
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I was concerned about the loss of a bungalow. As far as looking at the proposed two houses and the supposedly capable of accommodating people with accessibility needs, yes, there is a shower on the ground floor, but there's an awful lot of open plan on the ground floor, and I just wondered where these people were going to actually have as their sleeping accommodation on the ground floor, because looking at the way in which the staircases were put in, it doesn't look an easy one to make access to the first floor through a stair lift or putting in a permanent lift. Well, could Mr. Godden perhaps just go back to the plan of the property? And the other thing I was going to say was that the fact that you're putting an extra floor onto an existing bungalow still leaves you with a ground floor which has been set up with several bedrooms on the ground floor plus bathroom facilities, so you still would have bedroom accommodation on that ground floor. So it's a bit small, actually. Having looked at it online myself earlier, that was where I drew those conclusions. But obviously where the red dot at the moment is above that is the open plan area. There is the front bit, but it's got doorways through into the open plan area, so there's not really any totally private area that could then become living accommodation for sleeping as well on the ground floor. So as I say, I just question this use of the word. It is available for people with accessibility needs.
Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Thank you. I have a question actually of Jerry. If they hadn't got permission to raise the roof for it, would they have then just got permission to change it over to 2 houses?
Well, they've actually really got 2 fallback positions here. First of all, they've got the prior approval, and secondly, they've got the appeal decision, because although the inspector refused it on the SAC, he didn't refuse it on the other grounds. So it would be very difficult for us to defend.
That's a shame. I mean, I know the area and the gardens go back so far. To be quite honest, they could keep that bungalow in the front and they could put a bungalow down the bottom of the garden at the back, because there's another road there. That's my opinion. So
Let's not go down that road.
Oh, that's right, members, the officer's recommendation is to grant permission with conditions. Those in favour?
2.
Those against?
5.
Abstentions?
1.
Right, over to the members then for, as we've gone against the thing, Councillor Sam Kane.
Specifically, the reason for, I believe, all of us is the loss of the bungalow against local plan policy.
Sorry, the loss of the bungalow?
Yeah.
Members, you're obviously entitled to make your decision, but my professional advice is not to do that. Yes, there's dormers on the back roof slope. So there are rooms in the roof with dormers on the back roof slope.
Councillor Sam Kane.
Just coming back to the officer on that. So in these circumstances, your professional advice is ignore the local plan.
My professional advice is the local plan is there, but it is trumped, frankly, by the prior determination, which is a national level policy, and also by the appeal decision that has been dealt with by the planning inspector at Bristol. Again, that's the next level above us. So I fully understand members' concerns about the local plan, but it's not a broad brush that we can apply in every circumstance. We have to take each case on its individual merits, and the merits here are different to, for example, the merits of 3 doors up the road if one were to come in. We have to take it on its individual merits, and these are material considerations that we have.
I take everything that the officer's brought on board. I think I've said my piece, and my grievance is, as described, that there is this sort of get out of jail free. I'm not suggesting there was any skullduggery involved at all. It's just a real shame that this kind of loophole will mean that we cannot protect the bungalows in the district. So I'm going to withdraw my reason for refusing the officer's recommendation. I know that's confused the issue now, but
totally. So, it's,
So I'm looking at.
Has anybody else got any other reasons for refusal? Then we probably have to take it back to the vote on the previous recommendations, which is to grant permission, unless you've got a reason for refusal. If you're happy with Councillor Keynes, somebody else will have to propose it and somebody else will have to second it.
Chair, I presume if we do go forward with refusal, this goes to district development, does it not? Because I think this whole issue... No, it doesn't?
No.
Just say so. Well, I still think, taking Councillor Keynes' point, I, for one, believed the local plan was going to be sacrosanct, and I am a little concerned, and Jerry's already said he can understand our frustrations, but we are finding ourselves in the first case where the local plan is basically useless. And I can't see the decade it's taken us to get to this point is somewhat wasted if an important policy, which I think this is an important policy, that we retain bungalows, is cast aside at the first hurdle. And therefore I am concerned about this. And I would support, again, Councillor Keynes' reason for refusal, quite frankly.
Councillor Helen Kane.
Want the help of the planning officer. They had prior approval to put an additional story above the bungalow, right? Yes. Can't we actually base this, that this is our decision, that was the decision, why they changed now? I mean, we know that they put a second application, but we know the reasons they put the second application, because they consider now that they have approval for an additional story. I mean, we all know what is going on here. So how do we actually refuse this? Help us.
Well, I'm sorry, I can only give my professional advice, and the officer's recommendation is to approve. If members want to refuse it, absolutely fine, you are the decision makers, but you need to come up with the reason. The reason Councillor Kane come up with is I've just given my professional reason why members should be careful about adopting that. But at the end of the day, it's your decision, members, and if you vote to refuse it on whatever grounds, it will go forward on that.
Chairman, can I just say, it's Vivian, Democratic Services. Andrew Marks would like to speak.
I was just about to say that, yeah. Mr. Marks?
Thank you, Chairman. All I wanted to say, perhaps just to sum up the policy section, we're not disregarding or abandoning the local plan. The legislation, the Town and Country Planning Act, says that we should determine planning applications in accordance with the local plan or material planning considerations. Our advice is that the fallback position is a material planning consideration and you should give it some weight in your decision making.
Right, thank you. Councillor Sam Kane.
Not wishing to draw this out, but the officer's professional advice is not to pursue the reason for refusal that I've proposed. Effectively, what that means is the officer's professional opinion is we will lose the appeal. That's effectively what's being said. So, nonetheless, I am minded to make a stand here. I think it's important that we do. Otherwise, what is the purpose of us? So, yes, I now officially propose that we refuse this on that ground and look for a seconder.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I agree. We appear to have no teeth at all now, don't we? We're saying we want to keep things, and they're saying, well, no. Right, so what's our way forward? Right, so vote for refusal. Those in favour of refusing?
For the reason given. Yeah, for the reason given.
For the reason given, yes.
Well, that's 4, Chairman. There's 4.
And those against?
2.
Abstentions.
Sorry, Councillor Lee, what did you vote in favour for it? Sorry. Again.
No, for the.
You voted for refusal.
Oh no, I Right. Okay.
Yeah, so you voted for refusal.
5-2.
to me, Chairman. If you're saying we've got to have a way forward, I'm quite happy if they did it as semi-detached bungalows. Same space as a way forward.
Yeah, we're coming to that. So,
Do you have it?
yeah, have we got...
Have you got? You don't have to, do you, Jerry?
No, you don't have to.
no.
No.
So we refer this now to the DMC?
No,
it's
just
it,
refused.
that's it, it's done, yeah.
Refused.
So
You
that's
can
it.
refuse it. This committee can deal with that.
That's it.
There's not a policy issue here.
Right, so that's it then. So that application has been refused.
Sorry, Becky, what was the vote on that?
It was 5-2-1.
Top.
Right, there being no reason to exclude public and press, I believe. So I therefore close this meeting at 20:40. Thank you.